Welcome to Be Kind Connects. I'm your host, Shabnam Islam. And joining us today is the iconic Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, longtime plant-based physician who you may know from Forks Over Knives, director of the Heart Disease Reversal Program at the Cleveland Clinic, and world-renowned author of Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. Welcome, Dr. Esselstyn.
Thank you, Shabnam. Delighted to be with you.
Man, I just have to say, your personal journey is like from a storybook. You come from a lineage of prominent physicians. You attended Yale, was in the infamous Skull and Crossbones fraternity. You are a gold medal Olympic rower. You've received a Bronze Star for your efforts in Vietnam, and you married into what I like to call the Cleveland Clinic royalty. Right? And for those of you that don't know, his wife Anne is wonderful, but she's also the granddaughter of George Washington Cryo, founder of the Cleveland Clinic. So how did you do this all before the age of 40? I mean, what drives you? Because you are definitely a person who likes to get things done. What has been your driving force all these years?
I think it's just a tincture of time and skillful neglect.
I love that. So before we even talk about your process of how you practice, I want to know, when did you go vegan and what inspired you to go vegan?
Well, I was, after I finished my last year of combat in Vietnam, came back to Cleveland, and I was accepted, or rather I was offered a position in the Department of General Surgery, and shortly thereafter I became chairman of our breast cancer task force. And that led me to a disturbing feeling of no matter how many women I was doing breast surgery for, I was doing absolutely nothing for the next unsuspecting victim, which led to a bit of a global research. And it was quite striking to identify the fact that really that there are many cultures on the planet where breast cancer rates were 30 and 40 times less frequent than the United States. And in rural Japan in the 1950s, breast cancer was very infrequently identified. And yet as soon as the Japanese women would migrate to the United States by the second and third generation, they now had the same rate of breast cancer as their Caucasian counterparts. And perhaps even more powerful was cancer of the prostate. In the nation of Japan, in 1958, how many autopsy-proven deaths were there from cancer of the prostate? In the entire nation, 18.
Wow.
By 1978, 20 years later, they were up to 137, which still pales in comparison to the 28,000 men who will die from prostate cancer in this country this year. Well, it was along around this time in this research that it became apparent to me that there were multiple cultures where cardiovascular disease was virtually non-existent. And it just seemed to me that there would be more bang for the buck if we could look at cardiovascular disease, because if we could somehow persuade persons to eat in a way that they would save themselves from having heart disease, they would also markedly diminish the likelihood of having the common Western cancers of breast, prostate, colon, and pancreatic. So in 1985, I initiated my first study in patients who were seriously ill with heart disease to see if we could get them to eat a plant-based diet and halt any progression of their disease, and lo and behold, even often see disease reversal.
So would you say that your own pursuit of a vegan lifestyle coincided with the advocacy of plant-based medicine in your career focus? They kind of went hand in hand?
Totally, because I just did not feel that there was any justification in my going ahead and asking patients to eat this way unless Anne and I had done it first for at least a year. And I can remember I was putting see, I grew up on an Aberdeen Angus and a beef farm, and I was a cholesterolholic, so it took a while. But I kept going through the actual these progression of what you feel when you're making a lifestyle change. You go through pre-contemplation, contemplation, action, maintenance.
Preparation, action, maintenance.
Yeah, that's right. So the interesting thing was that I can remember I just come, so I kept putting it off, starting this research until April of 1984. I was with Ann at a surgical meeting in New Haven, Connecticut, and the papers were dull. It was rotten weather, and they always have a banquet after these conferences. And at the banquet, this waitress put down in front of me on a plate roast beef. It was draped over the sides. That
Mm,
was my moment. I
mm.
shook my head, and Ann said, "You're not going to eat your roast beef?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, fine, then I'll have it." Well, historically, Ann's mother had died at age 52 of breast cancer. 2 weeks after that meeting in New Haven, her sister came down with breast cancer. She looked at me and said, "I'm with you." So we started it for ourselves. And a year later, I went to the chairman of cardiology and asked if I could have a number of maybe 24 patients, which was a small study, but it was the number that I could still control and carry out my surgical obligations. And the cardiology chairman, agreed. And over the next year and a half, I acquired these 24 patients that started the study.
I mean, you've done really phenomenal work, and I love that you bring up Anne, because I am just so enamored with your entire family, like I'm sure most of our plant-based community is. And your wife and your daughter Jane, who've all created, and your son Kip, who've all created impactful careers in plant-based medicine in their own right, in their own ways. And so I'd like to know, what kind of insight can you provide to those who are concerned about raising vegan children and meeting nutritional requirements?
Well, I think the thing that's really quite striking is when you're eating a variety of plant-based foods, you're probably going to be healthier than you ever have before in your life. And because it's not only when you stop eating the foods that are going to injure your arteries, but it's all the other wonderful plant foods you have. So you are getting an enormous acquisition of what we call phytonutrients, all these vitamins and minerals that are so richly contained in all these plant foods. And you'll never hear of anybody who's eating a rounded menu of plant-based foods ever going to the emergency room and saying, "My God, help me out, I'm vitamin deficient or nutrient deficient." Doesn't happen.
Even though there'll be plenty of people that argue, where do you get your protein? How is your iron? And I think my levels are doing pretty good. How about yours?
Last I knew, they were right where they should be. Yeah.
Right. So it's a matter of breaking the stigma, changing the system. And I'd like to kind of talk about that briefly with you, because you've been a practicing physician for so long, and you do talk about the evidence of consuming meat and dairy products and the impacts that it has on things like breast cancer. But then you see organizations like the Susan G. Komen Foundation that is sponsored by Yoplait, by the very dairy industry that perpetuates the diseases that we see in our society. So, what is your stance on this as a physician, and what do you feel like physicians should be doing to kind of break this cycle?
Well, I look back and think about what it was like in 1984. What was that, almost 35 years ago or something? And my gracious, if somebody suggested that you eat plant-based, they were dumbfounded. Why would anybody ever eat that way? But we have to look historically at the fact that we've known for over 100 years that there were multiple cultures on the planet Earth where heart disease is virtually non-existent. And when you think about it, why? If we've known for 100 years that multiple cultures were non-existent, why haven't we brought that way of life to this country? And I was asked I was asked 8 years ago I was extended an invitation to become a member of the American College of Cardiology, which is a little unusual for a retired general surgeon. And I was happy to join, and I was asked to be a member of the nutrition committee. And one of the jobs of the nutrition committee is to try to uh, enlighten and convince cardiology and that group about what is the causation of the illness that they are all treating. Because, with all due respect, none of the drugs, none of the stents, none of the bypass operations that are offered by the cardiovascular community have one single thing whatsoever to do with the causation of the illness. And the way I've continued my interest in this disease is I once a month run a intensive counseling seminar. And that intensive counseling seminar is for patients who contact me, and they've all had heart disease, and they want to know how they can change their life to stop any further progression of the disease and perhaps achieve disease reversal. And I'm more than happy to do that. And it really kind of is so inspiring to take patients who've really, maybe they've had one or two heart attacks, maybe they've had stents, and maybe they've had bypass surgery. They don't want any more of that. And it's very gratifying to see them when they understand the causation of the illness. That means that they themselves are now empowered to be the locus of control to halt this disease that they themselves produced. And so we've got to have them understand how they produce their disease and how they can be empowered to be the ones that stop it. And but you cannot change lifestyle with a snap of your fingers. One of the frustrations that many other physicians have when they try to follow our method and they're unsuccessful. And why are they unsuccessful? They're unsuccessful for the patient because the patients don't change their lifestyle. And you got to understand that if you're going to give a patient a 10 or 15-minute office visit and expect them to change their lifestyle, you've been dreaming. That's just not going to happen. And therefore, under our present format, we do this once a month with usually about 18 or 20 patients. And my secretary will give me the phone number and the contact information. And usually about 2 weeks before the seminar, I will insist on personally calling every one of those patients myself so that I can get my arms around their story. And at the same time, they are going to be able to ask questions of me so that coming to the seminar, we have a strong platform from which we can all move forward. And that way, when I wrote up our most recent scientific paper on those results of some 200 patients, the compliance rate was 89.3, almost 90%.
Wow.
And for those patients who were compliant over the close to 4-year follow-up period, they absolutely stopped any disease progression.
Wow.
But you'd think that that cardiologists would jump on this, but there are a number of reasons why. One, they just don't have the time or the patience to spend that amount of time with patients. And also, I think I have to bring this up because what do you suppose you get paid for doing a bypass operation?
A lot of money.
It's hundreds of thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah.
And how about stents? That's a pretty picture as well. Or just
and it's a very common surgery.
or you have them, yes, or then you have them simply put them on drugs. Now compare that income if you were to talk to a patient about Brussels sprouts and broccoli. Right.
But what about the Hippocratic Oath? I mean, shouldn't every physician still seek it as this is a social and professional
I'd
responsibility?
like that. I'd like that. I'd support that.
You know, but again, this also requires, I think, for medical education to have a good proportion of education to be allotted to nutrition and physiology, and that's maybe not what we're getting currently in the current structure of academics. But
Well,
I do want to talk. I'm sorry,
it's,
go on, sir.
it's just so challenging until I think, but what may actually come someday, the medical legal committee won't come in and see because if a patient sees if the patient sees the doctor and the doctor never tells the patient about how they can halt and arrest the disease themselves, that really almost, to my mind, ought to be close to malpractice.
I couldn't agree more. And but I want to go back to your seminar series because is this something that is only available to patients that are willing to come see you in person? Is this something that you can do online?
Yeah, for a number of years it was done in person. They would, because I was director of the Cleveland Clinic cardiovascular reversal program at the Wellness Institute. You forgot to include that. It's at the Wellness Institute.
I'm so sorry.
Not downtown in the main campus.
Okay.
So where were we?
Do people have to come see you in person to be part of the seminar?
No. So for a number of years, from 2009, from I think till about I think it was, when did the COVID start? Was that 20? Yeah,
2020.
2020. They would, believe it or not, people would fly to Cleveland, get in a hotel, and then we would meet at the Wellness Institute. Well, the COVID stopped all that, and we've now, ever since then, we've done it virtually. And that can be very effective because we can see more patients at the same time, and it's really can be quite effective. And I've been just as impressed because although I don't, because I still have the opportunity to talk with every one of them myself on the phone beforehand. But then you can sort of see them through the computer, and when it's virtual, yeah, it works out.
And your book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, actually really tells people about the specific scientific evidence that you've had from your 20-year longitudinal study or your results. And it gives them some of those behavior change methods, correct? To start.
I think that, but I think, yes, the things that are so, I think that are so powerful often are the actual testimonials of the patients that have been through the program. And also we have a section on pictures where we show really the numbers of disease reversal. That is, they see, let's suppose they have an angiogram before, when we first start, then they have an angiogram a year or two later, and you can show the actual reversal of the disease, which is really quite powerful for the patients to think that is something that they can do as well.
Now, as a physician who specializes in cardiology, the costs associated with eating an animal-based diet compared to eating a plant-based diet in regards to increasing levels of morbidity and mortality, how do they compare? Like we were talking about, what percentage of coronary angioplasty surgeries come from plant-based clients?
How many patients get a stent who are plant-based?
Yeah.
Well, before they ever go plant-based, when they're still eating regularly, they may have it. But once they become plant-based, you don't have to have stents.
But so you're saying that it's pretty rare, because if you have a genetic predisposition, we can't say that there aren't other environmental factors or outliers, but it's pretty rare for somebody who's lived a plant-based lifestyle to come into the Cleveland Clinic and need your services, correct?
No, not. Unless, you see, what many people miss the point on is, as an example, is oil. For instance, why do I treat vegans for heart disease? Because they eat French fries and they eat oil and they eat glazed donuts, all things that are going to injure the endothelium. I'd like to take just a moment and share with you where all experts would agree that where this disease has its inception, its onset, its beginning is when they progressively injure the life jacket and the guardian of our blood vessels, would happen to be that delicate innermost lining called the endothelium. And the endothelium is responsible for making this truly magic molecule of gas called nitric oxide. And believe it or not, it is that nitric oxide gas that is responsible for the salvation preservation and protection of all of our blood vessels because of its remarkable functions. Okay.
Got it.
I
And
mean,
so,
I can march through the functions of nitric oxide, but I'm not sure you want to use this time for that. It's up to you.
no, but I do want to talk a little bit about oils, because we do hear in the media that now, and maybe from some medical um, papers, that there are arguments that seed oils are bad. Too much omega-6 in these oils, linoleic acid, or the ratio is not balanced, or even
No, bad.
claiming that the oils are not oils are toxic. So I kind of wanted to have you discuss your findings.
I wrote a paper in 2019 that was
Oil
published.
is healthy. I read it.
That's right. I published it in the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention. And there I stress and review the animal studies and the human studies showing how oil injures the endothelium. Remember, we're back to what I just talked about a few minutes ago, the endothelium. Because when you injure the endothelium, you don't make nitric oxide. And when you don't make nitric oxide, you don't have enough. Then you've lost your vessel protection. Remember the functions of nitric. I'm going to go through those. The functions of nitric oxide, which is your great protector, are: one, nitric oxide will keep all the cellular elements within your bloodstream flowing smoothly like Teflon rather than Velcro. It keeps things from getting sticky. Number two, nitric oxide is the strongest blood vessel dilator in the body. When you climb stairs, the arteries to your heart, the arteries to your legs, they widen, they dilate. That's nitric oxide. Number three, nitric oxide will protect the wall of the artery from becoming thick and stiff or inflamed and protect us from getting high blood pressure or hypertension. Number four is the absolute key. A safe and normal amount of nitric oxide will protect us all from ever developing any blockages or plaque. But every person on the planet Earth who has heart disease, whether that's from London, Berlin, Chicago, New York, or St. Louis, if they have heart disease, it's because in the previous decades, they have so sufficiently trashed, injured, compromised, and injured their endothelial capacity to make nitric oxide, they don't have enough to protect themselves from making blockages and plaque. However, the good news is this: it's not a malignancy. This is a benign foodborne illness, and once you can get patients to understand that never, ever again are they to pass through their lips a single morsel that is going to further injure an already train-wrecked endothelium, because then the endothelium will recover, make enough nitric oxide so we can not only halt disease progression, but we often see elements of disease reversal. Now, you want to know what the foods are that every time
Yes,
they
I
pass
do.
you injure the endothelium?
Tell us.
Any drop of oil. Olive oil, corn oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, coconut oil, palm oil, oil in a cracker, oil in a chip, oil in a piece of bread, oil in a salad dressing. Eliminate the oil. Also, you want to eliminate anything with a mother or a face: meat, fish, chicken, fowl, turkey, and eggs. And we want to eliminate anything that is dairy: milk, cream, butter, cheese, ice cream, and yogurt. Lastly, sugary foods: cakes, pies, cookies, excesses of maple syrup, molasses, and honey. I don't like peanuts, peanut butter, nut butters, cashew sauce, or avocado. And lastly, avoid the coffee with caffeine. Yes, you can have decaf, but not coffee with caffeine.
I love that. And there you heard it from the GOAT himself, the greatest of all time, just gave you the holy grail of how to live. And let's talk a little bit about caffeine and coffee. So coffee, you're saying, so the coffee bean is not the problem, it's the caffeine itself?
You may have noticed it then, and that I had a pretty. If you make this transition I was just talking about, it's fairly significant transition, right? Right. But you have to remember that the reward is absolutely enormous. To prevent yourself from having strokes, prevent yourself from having vascular dementia, prevent yourself from having heart attacks, and Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, allergies, asthma. It's been the greatest gift that medicine has ever received was plant-based nutrition.
And it's the key to living a fruitful life, one that is active and involved and it just doesn't stop.
You know, the reason that my program will succeed where others may fail. Ready for this?
Yes, I am.
Nobody else is as mean as I am.
Mean or strict?
I hate failure in my patients, so I give them all the details of what I expect.
Okay. I like to call that high standards. And we need some higher standards through our medical practitioners.
You get more laughs if you talk about being mean.
I mean, what I truly love is that what you're trying to show people is that the long-term care that's required for eating animal-based products, eating excessive amount of oils, has detrimental effects to the way that you can live your life. And so, are you looking for surgery down the road, or are you looking to live a healthy, vibrant life? And I think you provide those solutions. So, what I'd like to ask you lastly is,
if I take my program to Okinawa and they look at me and say, "Well, Dr. Esselstyn, you finally got it straight. We've been doing this for over 500 years here."
But we take a look at cultures that live in blue zones, right? That are living longer and healthier lives, and they are following these basic practices.
Yeah, you'd love to see I'd love to see the blue zones and see where their death certificates are. Usually, when we've looked at some of those cultures where they claim that people that live very long, if you look carefully at the death certificates, sometimes it's not quite as impressive as you would have liked. On the other hand, I'm sure that there are many people who will become quite senior and quite active in that environment. But remember that I think the island of Crete, where it was known that people had a very healthy life and lived long, and yet they were having some olive oil. But when you outweigh the fact that of the injury that the olive oil was causing, compared to all the heavy fruits and vegetables they were eating and very little of any meat, that's obviously a positive in their health.
So, what can you say after decades of accomplishing so much as a war veteran, from a physician, from a family perspective, from what you've done in the community? What do you see as your biggest accomplishment thus far?
Oh, probably my kids.
That's a beautiful legacy. And for those of you that aren't following the Esselstyns, they are an amazing family. It is so beautiful, welcoming, and I just love the energy that you guys have, the vitality. And it's truly, you have a sense of closeness that I think that's unseen these days. And it is a really beautiful
Well, the other
family.
thing I didn't mention, I mentioned my kids, but that doesn't come alone without mentioning Anne, my wife of over 60 years, and the wonderful job that she has done with our children.
And that is how you have a lasting marriage, ladies and gentlemen. You truly, truly value your partner and the people around you, and you both pursue life with the same passion. And we are just so happy here at VKind that you were able to extend your time with us. And so that wraps up this edition of VKind Connects with the magnificent Dr. Esselstyn. To learn more about Dr. Esselstyn and his published works, his upcoming events, and all of his services, please go to dresselstyn.com. And to watch this episode and many more, go to www.vkindconnects.com. And Dr. Esselstyn, would you like to add something else?
Thank you.
You know what? Thank you. Thank you from me, from the VKind team, and from the VKind community. We truly appreciate you, and especially Anne.